Some books you read will leave you feeling confident and full of inspiration, while others can take you down a deep rabbit hole of confusion. Philosophy is full of books like this. At first you're inspired and eager to take on the task of such an infamously challenging book, but sooner or later the enthusiasm is beaten out of you by cryptic terms and convoluted concepts that just leave you feeling hopeless. And if you're feeling this way, or you're too intimidated to even start some of these classical works, know that you're not alone. Today I'm going to share the attitude, steps, and approach I take when reading challenging books. The first step is going to be have a plan. As the great Benjamin Franklin once said, by failing to plan, you are planning to fail. So when it comes to making a plan, you want to start off by defining what is your purpose for reading the book. What are you going to get out of it and how are you going to do so? And I'm going to assume if it's a challenging book that you're not reading it for entertainment, but rather you're reading the book for the purpose of gaining further knowledge. Now with that in mind, you want to accept that you're not going to understand or absorb everything within the book on your first pass. It's going to take a lot of rereading, a lot of additional resources and time to actually understand all that's in that book and to be able to go deeper on certain ideas or concepts. You want to just approach the book with an honest, modest approach and say, hey, I'm going to read this, give it my best shot, and I just want to walk away able to explain and express the broad view, the broad ideas conveyed within the book. And maybe a reach goal can be, hey, I want to, be able to explain some of the little intricacies and go a little bit deeper than, just a broad view and be able to explain that to friends or colleagues or things of that nature. And that leads me to the difference between memorizing and understanding. If your goal is just to check off a box or seem intelligent to others or spout off a bunch of whimsical quotes, this video is probably not for you. That's more along the lines of memorizing. But if your goal is to gain a deeper understanding of the concepts, a deeper understanding of your world, and be able to dig deeper into these ideas, create your own abstract conclusions from what you read, that leads you to understanding. And that requires a level of patience and perseverance that's going to be needed to get past that daunting wall of confusion that you're bound to face. So all in all, accept that you might only understand 10% of the book the first time you read it, but be excited about what that 10% can do to enhance your life. Next up, you need to have a process for taking notes and a system for storing them. And I'm not going to dig too deep into my own personal method, as that's probably saved best for another video. But the point is, you need to find a system that works for you. There's a bunch of different ideas on YouTube and online for how to note take and annotate, whether you use Notion, Obsidian, all these different apps, doesn't really matter. Find a system that works best for you, especially a system that's convenient that you're going to stick to. Now, I don't care if you write in your book or you don't, you tap it or you don't, you highlight or you don't, doesn't really matter to me. What's important is that you engage with the text. Physically reading those words on the page, that's part of the learning process. But to me, actually engaging, summarizing what you're learning is what's going to allow for better recollection. It's going to allow for you to actually be able of explaining and expanding beyond just reciting the words on the page, and that is true learning. One approach I like to take is to try and simplify concepts as much as I can. So if it's Kant's rigorous system about perceiving objects and the categories, what I try and do is break it down in modern terms or realistic practical situations. So I might hold up my pen as I'm reading and say, what does it look like to go through those categories? What is it for me to perceive this object? And by doing that, I can actually start to conceptualize and understand what it is I'm reading. And it allows you to actually you're not going to get to the minutia, all the little details of the concepts. That's why we're going to read further and further into the text and so forth. But by breaking it down, you can start to get a little base layer of understanding, which I think is important, and it allows you to explain it to a spouse, explain it to a friend who has never read the book and might never read the book, but you can explain it. And I think through teaching others, you understand things a lot better yourself. Now, my next tip is don't get stuck. Which I know is a lot easier said than done, but what I'm getting at is don't get too fixated on a specific section or a specific page for too long. Move on, forget about it, and come back to it later. Oftentimes you read further down the chapter or later in the book, you start to connect ideas and you go, wait a minute, I actually understand what they were saying earlier in the book. You can come back to it on a second pass and have a lot better chance at actually comprehending what the author was saying. But it's important to accept the confusion. Accept that you don't know things and a lot of it's not going to make sense at first, and that's okay. And it's kind of funny that the Penguin edition of Critique of Pure Reason in the introduction, it even pulls a reference from a quote in a Robert Musil book. When he stopped reading in exhaustion after half an hour, he had only reached page 2. So in simple, don't be that guy. Don't get stuck on page 2. Move on, trust the process, don't get discouraged, but just stay persistent. And lastly, YouTube is your study buddy. There are infinite resources on the internet, and specifically YouTube has tons and tons of summaries, of lectures, of videos breaking down all kinds of books. Pretty much every book you could read, there's somebody discussing it, breaking it down, reviewing it, summarizing it on the internet. Specifically, a channel I've referenced in the past that I lean on a lot is Dr. Gregory Sadler. He's got a channel of just an immense amount of videos, pretty much every book. But I will reference there is one book, Critique of Pure Reason, that he doesn't really have videos on. And I actually stumbled across a professor from the Netherlands that has a deep, intense breakdown of Critique of Pure Reason. And so I'll make sure I link both channels below, because again, it's difficult when you don't have resources to lean on, if you're not in, a university, to have a professor to lean on. So again, YouTube is your study buddy. The internet is out there. Use what's available. But still, come back to the primary text. Try to understand things first on your own, and then after you check out a resource, you gain a little bit of a background, you can return to the text with more confidence, and again, start to break down things by yourself and come to your own conclusions. So pretty much, don't feel stuck or alone. Use your free resources that are available to you and stick with it. Alright guys, that's it for today's video. Hopefully you got something out of it, and if you're struggling with a book right now, comment down below, let me know what book you're struggling with. I'm getting close to starting Hegel's Phenomenology of Spirit, so I will be in the trenches myself come very soon. But anyway, drop a like if you enjoyed it. Like I said, comment what book you're reading right now or attempting to read. Subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.